Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlie Herman and welcome back to Charlie's Cruise Tips and Reviews. So today is going to be a tip video, not a review. I don't have any cruises coming up until December. I know I said in my last video I was going to discuss the new Carnival Rewards program, but the more I talk about it, the angrier I get, and to be honest, I don't care anymore. I'm not going to say I moved on, but I have done the status match program for MSC, and I've started booking cruises on other cruise lines just because basically you, it's not worth it to go nuts anymore when there are other options out there. And they have walked back some of their policies, especially when it came to Diamonds member, which has pissed me off even more because I am a Platinum member. So anyone who's Diamond before then, their status stays lifetime status, but Platinum you still have to keep every 2 years re-earning your status, even though they're giving you 10,000 points bonus, which really, when you think about it, really isn't that much. You still got to spend about another $15,000 every 2 years on Carnival just to keep your status, and it's not worth it. And it is just too much money. But like I said, I'm not getting into it. I'm done. No, I'm not talking about it. So this tip video is my top 5 tips for disembarkation. Now, this is probably the least fun topic I'm ever going to talk about, but it is important, especially about when it comes to disembarkation, especially when you travel for your cruise. I always travel for my cruise. I fly. Some people take the train. Some people drive, but I always travel for my cruise. I always fly, and this is my top 5 tips for disembarkation. Now, I'm going to use Port of Miami as an example, as I usually do, because I've cruised out of that port the most. I think about 95% of my cruises have been out of Port of Miami. So I'm not going to do the math right now, but yeah, pretty much most of my cruises have been out of that port, so this is the best example I can use. Okay, my fifth tip, I'm going to go 1 through 5. So my first tip is carry off your own luggage if possible. Now, it seems easier said than done because not everyone has the spinner bags or the wheelie check piece luggage. Some people do use duffel bags. So if you have a duffel bag, obviously, depending how heavy it is, you may not want to try and carry it off the ship and walk off with yourself, depending what type of bag it is, how big it is. If it's lightweight, if it's a heavyweight bag, like if it's one of the original Under Armour duffel bags, those tend to be a bit heavier. That's before they started going to the lightweight material. I actually still have one of those in my closet. It serves a purpose, but I wouldn't try to carry it off anymore. It's just too heavy, especially trying to get through the terminal, then to the shuttle bus and everything. It's just that's the type of bag you want to check and just let them take and pick up the morning of in the terminal. So now, like I said, if your bags are on wheels and whether you have the spinner or the two-wheel pulley, I recommend just carry your bags off with you because it just makes things a whole lot easier, especially I wouldn't say unless you have the priority disembarkation, it allows you to book an earlier flight, but it does give you more flexibility. For example, you can get off the ship a bit earlier, you can get to the airport earlier, you can either jump in a taxi, an Uber, or take an earlier shuttle, because the earlier you get off, the earlier you get off the ship, the earlier you get out of the terminal, and earlier you can get, like I said, in your taxi, your share shuttle ride, or if say you book the transfer to the airport, and the earlier you get to the airport, it can just relax. It's no longer a stressful situation. You're out of the terminal, you're on your way to the airport, you can just relax. And having control of your own bags tends to make people a bit more at ease, as well as you can also just get off a bit earlier if it makes you feel better just to get off the ship a few minutes earlier than everyone else. Okay, my second tip is be out of your stateroom by 8 a.m. Okay, disembarkation day, you gotta keep in mind, it's the busiest day. It's turnaround day for the crew, so it's just not busy for you trying to get off the ship, get to the airport, or your car, or to the train, or however, the bus terminal, however you travel for the cruise. The crew has to turn the ship around. If you're getting in at 8 if you're doing at 8 in the morning, they want everyone out of the rooms by 8 o'clock because they have to strip down the rooms, clean them, take off the sheets, wash the sheets, clean the rooms, and get it ready for the next cruise. Keep in mind that they want, as soon as they get down to passenger zero, which is the last person off from the previous cruise, that's passenger zero, guest zero, then that's when they can start boarding the next cruise. And they want all the rooms ready by 1:30 p.m. So the earlier you're out of your room, it makes it easier for the crew to turn your room around and get ready for the next person. Now, I have not done this yet, but if you are on a back-to-back cruise, I do know that most people and stay in the same room. So if you're on a back-to-back cruise, you get off the ship, you go through customs, you leave everything in your room, and then you get back on ship. But they still want you out of your room if it's a back-to-back cruise by 8 o'clock, so they can clean and get your room ready before everyone else. So you can just go right back to your room. To be honest, get ready for the pool, this, that, whatever. But if you're simply getting off the ship, they really do need you out of your room by 8 o'clock. So please be ready to be out of your room by 8 o'clock. If it means getting up a bit earlier, you go to breakfast right away, and then you have everything ready to go by 8 o'clock. That is a big help for everyone else. My third tip is don't try and get off the ship early if you're doing a traditional disembarkation. And what I mean is you leave your bags outside your room the night before. They take them for you. You pick them up in the terminal. Um, they don't try and get off the ship early because most 9 times out of 10 they're not going to let you until they call your luggage group. Now some cruise lines go by number, some go by tag colors, NCL goes by colors, Carnival and Royal go by numbers. So um, it really depends what group your number is, because some groups they'll call at once, like they'll call like 1 through 3 at once, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and continuous depending on the number, as well as NCL will go gold, red, and this depending um, on your priority and if you have an earlier flight or later flight. So they do it in certain groups. So don't wait. Don't try and get off the ship until your group is called, because A, most likely they're not going to let you in the terminal, and B, even if you do, if your bags aren't there, then you're waiting around like you know what for your bags to be delivered, and you're sitting there waiting for your bags. Well, you could still be on the ship, sitting in one of the lounges or one of the waiting areas and be more comfortable. So, as I said, don't don't try and get off the ship early. Wait until your baggage group is called and just relax. That's the whole point, to be honest, of having them take the bags off for you. You don't have to carry them off. Just wait until you're called. Otherwise, it causes too much congestion, and that can pretty much also slow down disembarkation because you're in the line when you're not supposed to be, and then you have to get back in line, and will probably take you even longer to get off the ship than it would have if you would have just waited for your group to be called. So just don't try and get off early. It's not worth it. I haven't tried to do it before. I know people who have tried, and it didn't work for them. They had to wait to get off when they got called. So just don't even try. It's not worth it. Okay, my my fourth tip is, if cruising out of Miami, Port of Miami, as I said, try and book a flight into Miami International Airport. Okay, make your life easier. It's only, or should I say, when you're flying home, not when you fly in for the cruise, but when you fly in, if you're flying to West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, it really doesn't matter. But when you're flying home for the cruise, try and make your life easier and just fly out of Miami International. It's only 15 minutes from the port. 20 minutes 20 minutes from with traffic. I've done it literally by the time I've walked out of the terminal, jumped in a taxi, I'm ready to check in at MIA 15 minutes later. I'm at the airport. I'm ready to get in line and drop off my bags or go to check in. It's just a lot easier. It's a lot less hassle. There are more options to get there. You can take a taxi, an Uber, Lyft. They have share shuttles in the port area if you don't want to do the cruise line transfer, which tends to be more money. So they have to share shuttle rides, which run a lot more often as well. If you want to book the transfer through the cruise line, you can do that as well. But there are several more options just getting to Miami International Airport. And to be honest, it might be easier to get a nonstop flight back home because Miami International Airport is a hub for American Airlines. Delta has a pretty decent presence there to their hub cities. They're adding more flights to more cities from Miami. United goes to their hub city. So if you live in a major hub city, especially within the Northeast, it's probably easier to fly out of Miami anyway, depending where you are. Um, I, there's another airline I don't like talking about, Spirit. Who knows if they're even going to be in business this time next year? But yeah, I went there. No one's expecting them this time next year for them to still be in business. It'll be a miracle if they are, but I'll leave that alone. But they have some flights out of there. Frontier flies out of Miami International Airport. They have their point-to-point service. Southwest flies to a few cities out of Miami International, even though their big hub is in Fort Lauderdale, about 40 minutes up the road. So there are plenty of options of Miami out of Miami International if you're traveling domestically and internationally, depending where you're going. So just try and make your life easier and fly out of Miami. It really will save a lot of anxiety of getting to the airport because it's just closer and there are a lot of nonstop options, even though you may not like the options with the airlines that are offered. It's still better than doing the hike up to Fort Lauderdale because that's my final tip because this has happened to me once. I'm going to get into it right now. If my fifth and final tip is if you have to fly out of Fort Lauderdale International Airport on your way home from your cruise, don't book a flight before 12:30 in the afternoon. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh my God, that's all the flights after a certain time. They're twice as much money. Like any flight after 12, 1 o'clock, they're almost like two, $300, $400 per person round trip, depending where you're going, which airline you're traveling. I understand, I get it, but you don't want to risk missing your flight because it is 40 minutes away. You never know if the ship's gonna arrive a little late because of high tides or because high winds and the ship has to slow down coming into port. We had that back in December on the horizon. We got in almost an hour, half an hour, 45 minutes late because we had to come in slower than normal because of the high winds and high tides. We had to slow everything down. Um, you can have bad weather in the port, which thunder and lightning, which could stop disembarkation for a while because it's not safe to have people going off the ship, walking off the ship into the gangway in that weather. So they may have to stop disembarkation altogether because of that. But trying to take bags off, this, that, whatever, it can slow everything down. Um, there was one time I just had a very slow disembarkation from coming off the NCO getaway. Took almost an hour just to get off the ship. And once I was in the terminal, I had my bags. I sat on the bus almost half an hour, 40 minutes before we left for Fort Lauderdale International Airport. Now, I'm telling the bus driver and the guy there, I'm going to miss my flight. Other people are saying on board they're going to miss their flight, but they waited until the bus was full to leave. And I was sitting there a good half an hour, 45 minutes. By the time I got to the airport, because I was flying JetBlue, so that's the third terminal there. By the time guy kept taking his time taking the bags off, chatting, this, that, whatever, I missed my flight. I missed bag drop by 5 minutes, by 2 minutes. So I literally missed my flight, and I had to wait from instead of taking the 12:05 flight and would have been home by 3:30. I would have been home at 4 o'clock at the latest, 4:30 at the latest. I had to wait. The only flight they had seats on that night without going standby on was the 6 o'clock flight. And that happened to be delayed an hour and a half anyway. So instead of getting home at 4:30, being at home in my apartment at my house at 4:30, I didn't get home until almost midnight because of all that. So as I said, if you're gonna have to fly out of Fort Lauderdale International, even with priority disembarkation, don't book a flight before 12:30. I know it's more expensive, but just make your life easier and don't deal with the stress and try and rush to the airport because it really can make the difference between you making your flight and missing your flight, depending how soon you get off the ship, how soon you get on the bus, how long you're waiting on the bus to get to the cruise port. So or should I say, I'm sorry, not to the cruise port, to the airport itself. So, said, if you're gonna go to Fort Lauderdale, give your book a flight after 12:30, unless you get in by before. If your ship gets in around 6, 7 a.m., okay, you can probably make a flight before 12 o'clock out of Fort Lauderdale, depending if you get in at 7. Maybe you can make an 11:30 flight. I would still give myself at least 4 hours between those two airports from the time you get in. Say by the time the ship is cleared to get off, you get off the ship. It could take you 15, 20 minutes. It could take you half an hour to get off the ship. So give yourself enough time. That's why I said, if your ship comes in at 8 o'clock or later, don't book a flight before 12:30. Just give yourself that peace of mind. And if your ship does get in before then, like 6, 7 a.m., you could probably make a 12 o'clock flight without a problem, but like I said, I wouldn't risk it. But that's just me. It's happened to me before. That's why I try now. Specifically, if I have to take a flight at a certain time before a certain time, I prefer to take it out of Miami because it's just easier. Even if it takes a little bit longer than I would like to get off the ship, I can just jump right in a taxi. And yes, it would be more money, but go right to the airport. I'm not sitting on the bus half an hour because it is almost 70, 100, 70, last 70, 75, $80 to go from Port of Miami to Fort Lauderdale in a taxi. I'm not sure what an Uber is, but it's probably not worth the price just to get off the ship to go there just to make your flight. So, like I said, be safe and book a flight after 12:30. So, in conclusion, those are my top five tips for disembarkation. I will have another video coming out very soon for my top tips. I'm not sure if they're going to be limited to just five or more than five. It could be 10 tips. I don't know. I have to go through them. But my top tips video for embarkation, and that one will be coming out very soon, probably within the next week or so. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great night, and remember, be a cruiser.